I have with me Pratik and Anagh, who are joining me from Nexus and Stellaris to host this panel. I think the more interesting part of the two panelists that we have, both of them are amazing, multifaceted personality. Known both of them for a long time. So I'll start with Miten. I think he's done everything and anything under the sun as far as startups are concerned. His active angel portfolio is better than most of the venture funds. He has built a company inside Times Internet. He has invested in companies. So MX Player was something that I think was very closely part of building. Several companies like Byju's or Uber and all very invested. And now part of core team at Cred. So back to operating role. We also have Ankur. I think Ankur requires no introduction. When you have 1.5 million subscribers on platforms like YouTube and I don't know how many other social media platforms, really you don't need an introduction. But I think what is more interesting, or actually not more, but maybe what is also interesting about Ankur is that he's been a founder prior to this of a startup nearby. Prior to he used to run Groupon India. So both of these members are really people who hopefully will give us a lot of insights during this discussion. Maybe I'll kick off with a very short 1 minute request for both of you to talk about things that people don't know about your journey. That will be a good way to get started, and then Pratik and Anagh will have more detailed questions to ask.
Ankur, you
want to get started?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ankur, before you start, one housekeeping item. At least just reminding the format. We'll try to finish all of our questions, and there are lots of them, between Pratik, Anagh, and myself within the first half an hour. And try to keep this discussion more interactive, more interesting to the second half, where audience can ask whatever questions they have. Even now, audience can type in their questions, and we can pick it up during the first half an hour. But second half an hour is exclusively for audience to jump in and chime in. Please go ahead, Ankur. Ankur, you want to get going?
Sorry, I was on mute. Do I give a spiel on just my content journey or something specific for the
one unknown thing? One thing that
unknown.
a lot of people don't know about you.
Man, it's very hard now for a content creator to share that. Then I'll have to go into my dark secrets. One thing that most people do not know about me is that when I was very young, I only had one ambition in life, and that was to become Superman. And मैं genuinely मंदिर जाकर भगवान के सामने प्रार्थना करता था कि मुझे Superman बना दो. And I used to be giving him the bait that if I do get that superpower, I will only use it for good and good purposes.
Very cool.
I don't know why I got that memory just instantly in my mind right now.
So are you done? So you already ho gaya, matlab you're done basically, right? It's happened.
Wow, Miten. Wow. You're always the smooth guy coming in last minute.
Oh, you achieved it. Anyway, I guess I don't have such interesting stories as Ankur, but one thing that a lot of people probably don't know about me is that I wrote lots of code in the early part of my career, and I'm actually an inventor. I've actually invented something. I don't know what I'm doing these days, far away from actual making, but that's one thing that a lot of people don't know about me. I have 8 US patents.
And I remember meeting Miten for the first time, and that's what he told me. And I was like, boss, this is it. Ye dosti kabhi nahi tod sakte aap.
Miten achieved whatever he had to achieve in that early part. Uske baad he said, let me just go on and do all kind of random stuff.
Cool. Awesome. Ankur, जब आप when you talk on the video as well ना, ऐसा लगता है YouTube पे देख रहा हूँ. So I forget that it's a real video. That's a live video.
Everything is the same. So I would be you saying awesome. The same thing.
So maybe let's kick it off. Lots of people are here. Lots of people are looking to learn, and I'm very excited to kick this off also because I would think that I have actually had a lot of these conversations with both of you independently, and this is just doing it in public and nothing else. So very excited. So maybe the way to maybe we can start by by talking about the distribution in the country. The distribution of content in India has evolved over the past few years as new platforms have come in, as new types of content is coming in, as creators have learned more, as platforms have learned more. So would love to understand from both of you, and maybe Ankur, you could start because you have been creating content. What has been the change in the way creators have evolved and content distribution platforms have evolved over the past few years? And let's take it forward.
Yeah, particularly in the last 2.5 years, Pratik, what's happened is that content has clearly become massive and mainstream. And a lot of people ask me what changed. And I believe that the change is not so much on the demand side, which is what most people think happened, where we were locked in our houses and we had time to kill, and suddenly we were consuming a lot more content than we were. While that's true, I believe a large reason of why content became so embedded in our daily lives is because it was for the first time that really good quality content came in from creators who otherwise were not creating. So it was more about the time at the end of the creators who were just busy living their lives and doing a good job or whatever it is that they were doing, whether they were professionals or entrepreneurs or anything else. Now with us locked up, they had to connect to the audiences or wish to connect to the audiences. And they started to create this high quality content, which was not superficial, not on the surface, came in with a lot of experience, a lot of expertise behind it. And that then suddenly became mainstream. And that's why it's never surprising for me that for an entire generation right now, more so the people that I get to interact with every day, 18 to 24-year-olds, even late teenagers, for them, YouTube or a platform like YouTube is their university. They are not relying on college or textbooks or even professors or independent professors in person to learn what they want to learn. Their how-to searches have gone through the roof when it comes to a place like YouTube. So people have lapped onto that. The second thing that has clearly happened is because there is this entire generation that is coming up with demand, and there are these creators that have time on their hands, how can we create a mechanism that the most amount of content can be consumed in the least amount of time? And that gave form to, of course, the short form content made famous by TikTok. But I believe that their exit out of the country then gave fillip to Instagram and to YouTube, and of course, to a lot of equally good and bad quality short form content platforms in India. And that has now become a second rage. So there is university/learning that's happening in the form of really high quality content being created by suppliers. And there is this really addictive form of entertainment that has come up. And what platforms are now struggling to do is combine the two, which I believe will be a failed battle, and they ought to stick to just one. But that has, in my view, been the last 2.5 years landscape change from what it was before.
Awesome.
I think the only thing I would add to that, Ankur, I agree with both of these points. I think that the nature of, at some point, the supply demand ends up creating a new kind of flywheel, right? And I think we're at that moment in time where this flywheel is creating crazy compounding effects. Because there's demand, there's supply, because there's supply, there's demand. And this whole, cohort of young India is far more DIY, do it yourself, than the previous generation. I'm previous generation. If you compared to the bulk of users that are kind of out there right now, and so I think they're seeking this out, and therefore therefore supply gets created, and therefore this is happening. And as a result of that, as the attention shifts have happened, dollar shifts have happened, and therefore there's now a economic incentive also for the demand to get created, because you can now, for the supply to get created, because there are ways to monetize now, which didn't exist before. And so I think flywheel effect is creating a whole bunch of compounding second order, third order effects, which I think we're only starting to see now. And I think that's, it's a bit like this. Like today I was driving in the outskirts of Bangalore, and a thought hit me, which is, everywhere on the highway, India is getting built. Construction ho raha hai, kahin na kahin, sab jagah pe construction ho raha hai. And like a few months ago, I was in another country, and things were pretty chill. In the developed world, stuff is sorted. It's pristine, it's clean, it's clear. Things are done. But when you're in a market where there's a lot of new things getting figured out, the second order effects, and that's what you're seeing in this sort of content and creator and consumer ecosystem. There's a tremendous amount of excitement because of these flywheels, and it's very unique. I think what gets created here will be very different than what gets created in China, than what gets, we've all heard these stories, right? From 5 years ago. Yaar, China mein ye hota hai, yaar, ek ghante mein itna something sells, and, some other thing happens. And, so I think we're in the middle of that sort of moment here in India.
Makes sense. And when you're talking about second order effects, I'm also realizing that the tools had also had a real role to play in it. That now, because of that flywheel, better tools got created, and those tools got made normal people like me we could create content better, and we don't need a high quality camera or a high quality editing software, etc. And that led to the flywheel. Awesome. Changing gear, Ankur, you have of course created a distribution pipe for yourself, and as far as I understand, it was first a personal passion, then a brand got created around you, and after that you went and started distributing content. But hey, distributing content at the end of the day is expensive, and like you were talking about it in the backstage, that most people don't realize the value of ads or other strategies that people can use to distribute content. So we'd love to understand your journey, and when you started, how you thought about distributing content, because it would be expensive. And if I had to start a new channel today, I would always think, yaar, kitna bhi acha bana lu, bikega to chalega to nahi, because pahunchenge nahi log. Like, that's how normal people think.
True. No, I get that. So this was a very important decision that I had to make around my content. So what you're right about, Pratik, is I started creating content several years back, not with the intention of doing what I'm doing right now. I've been blogging since 2005. I've been creating videos on LinkedIn since 2013. I've been with a YouTube channel since 2017, on Instagram since 2017, blah, 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 blah. And it's, of course, only in the last 2 years that Philip's change has happened, largely because of my focus on it. But what was very clear was I could either use this content or this distribution that was getting built for two purposes. One is to sell, or the other is to generate trust. And it was visible, especially from my experience of running Groupon Nearby for the last several years, that building content to generate trust is what I want to do. I don't ever want to, in any of my content, sell anything that I am making. I would love to work with brands and endorse them, which is just an integrated way of doing that. But there is something that I have personally made that I could sell, whether it's anything, merchandise or my courses, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to do that. I instead want to create a parallel distribution stream along with my content, so that this distribution stream reaches out to a lot more people than it does. So to share numbers, today my content reaches out to about 13 million people a month. My ads, on the other hand, that I run on Google and Facebook, reach out to 22 million people a month. And that could not have happened with just my content, because the content is organic. It just takes its own nice, sweet time to get to this point, while the ads is literally a turn on and turn off. Why do I do this? Because when people see the ads, and most likely they don't know of me because it's only reaching 13 million as against 22, it's quite likely that they will dismiss it the first time around. But then they see the ad again, they see it again. And at some point of time, they will go and look up, who the hell is this guy, Ankur Warikoo? And when they go and look me up, they see years and years of hopefully quality content in their definition that they will be led to believe is something which is not a fly-by-night operator, as against somebody who genuinely wants to help and can help. And that just shows up in the numbers. We were discussing backstage. My conversion on the landing page of an ad when clicked once is 7%. My conversion on the landing page when not clicked the first time, but come through a YouTube or a Google search on Ankur Warikoo or anything around Ankur Warikoo is 36%. And that's crazy. because that suddenly means that when they went through my content and they realized and consumed it, they suddenly had a lot more belief in what I was trying to sell as against not before. And it's ridiculous how many creators do not think of this as a legitimate way of expanding the distribution. One, it has to be done with the content as a trust engine. So you cannot escape the hard work of the first few years to start building that trust without monetizing it. And that is the hardest journey where most creators fail, because that's like committing to a journey without seeing an end result financially. But if you were to be able to commit to that, then please use a very simple ROI-based ads approach, where for every dollar spent, you make more than $1 back. And as long as you are making $1 back, your ad budget is unlimited. You can spend as many as you can. Like today, my ROI for every dollar spent is $1.98 gotten back. And my mandate to my team is spend 1,000 crores a month. I don't care. Spend as much as you can, as long as you are at 1.98 ROI. Of course, that's not possible because it starts breaking. But we went from spending 500 rupees a day 2 years back to today spending close to 3 lakh rupees a day while maintaining this ROI and upwards. And it's just working. It's working like nobody's business. So the tools that we were referring to are doing a brilliant job of delivery, of operations, of streamlining and making it super easy for people to either create content or to deliver it. But I still feel that there is a big gap in marketing and sales for a creator, which is still their responsibility, and they do not necessarily know how to do it as well as they should.
Moving on to a slightly different topic from Miten. So Miten, you have had the benefit of seeing like MX Player very closely, right? When you're at Times Internet. And the question there is that the Indian audience, like for very long, has been like a lot of people have assumed that they will not be paying for digital content, and that has how it has played out as well traditionally. But do you think that's changing, or like do you think an inflection point has happened, or is somewhere around the corner where people will start paying for content, like subscriptions could be micro payments? But what's going on there in your opinion?
Look, I think ultimately the most successful business models will be freemium, where the bulk of your content is available for free. And some of it then leads into a monetization funnel. Now that monetization funnel can be of a variety of things, right? So for example, on video, we've seen that if you break things into episodic content, you can sort of give two episodes of a show for free and then start charging for the third or the fourth, assuming people are hooked on. By the way, this works very well even on audio, right? And we've seen this in other platforms where audio is kind of broken down into episodic content, and then you can make money. There's also a whole interesting sort of phenomenon happening now around tipping. To some extent, you'll see this happen in some evolved use cases where people are just spending a tremendous amount of time watching, consuming. It's also become almost a spectator sport. Many things have now become spectator sort of types of content, which again didn't exist before. It goes back to the point I was making earlier, which is that we're in this flywheel of new types of use cases emerging for streaming, for live, or for even recorded content. Where I see this going is that I think people will pay for a set of things on a monthly basis. I think they will slot a certain number in their head, and I think they will sort of go in and pay for that. It could be, sports is obviously one of the most engaging reasons people pay, right? For video. The other thing that people pay for is some kind of vocational content, and I think again, I think what's happened also is that the delivery of new forms of content is not restricted only to OTTs anymore. I mean, to a large extent, Unacademy is the YouTube of education, right? It's kind of getting broken down, right? I mean, if you were to again think about, form factor versus platform, right? And I think that's sort of the way in which things are evolving. So in my view, Free content is here to stay. Freemium is the way most platforms will have to build their strategies. So you'll have a large freemium funnel, and you'll have, some sub funnels of conversion into specific use cases. All the large platforms will have to have a breadth of content to even be relevant. And if I can't get access to a bulk of my specific need, entertainment or education or sport, or if I can't get the bulk of that, you're not going to be able to make it. So to some extent, these are almost kind of in a boring way becoming almost like the cable TV business. And that kind of sucks. But this is the nature of the capex required, both on running the infra, licensing a lot of the content, and then over time, monetizing. So it's becoming a staying power game, as to an extent that we may or may not like. But that's the nature of scaled platforms.
Interesting. Pratik, you wanted to ask?
Yeah. So, Ankur and Miten, both of you. So, Ankur, you did a video with Tanmay Bhatt long back where you talked about what companies do wrong when they are creating content and they're hiring people with content creation ideas. And that resonated with me because I think that both of your experiences around content creation, and within Cred in my mind is the best, is amongst the best content-led transaction platforms out there. I just realized the tea I was having was bought from Cred just because it was the story was told better than any other platform. So the point I want, the question I want to drive home here is, what is it that brands can do better when they are thinking about content creation and distribution? And when I think brands, I'm talking companies and like everyone in our portfolio and companies. What can they do better? And Ankur, maybe you can start because you have worked with a lot of companies on that front, and it would be good to get your perspective.
I think Miten will be a far better person to start here, and I can then chime in and say I agree.
Look,
That's my job.
Look, I think most companies make the mistake of thinking inside out versus outside in. Yeah, I have this stuff to sell, and let me make content tying to that, as opposed to taking an audience first view and trying to ask, what need state in the audience's mind am I trying to slot myself into, right? And I think you've got to work backwards from that, as opposed to, and I'll give you an example from advertising that we did, not just at Cred. I mean, and obviously, Cred's brand team and brand advertising is something that's to some extent working well for us. But if you go back even to the Ghana ad, and I want to take you back there for a minute. If you go to search, and if you search the first ad that made Ghana popular, and this is, by the way, we went to a content creator, Amit Trivedi. Okay, Amit Trivedi is a musician. We didn't say, we didn't go to them with here's a script, go write it. So here's our objective. We want to attach ourselves with music streaming as a category, right? So we didn't say we could have started saying we have 3 million music, songs to stream, blah, 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 right? Amit Trivedi on his own said, bas bajna chahiye gana. Right? So he came at it from the customer's point of view, from a large scale audience point of view. So first thing, not inside out, outside in. Second thing, meet a lot of creators and then let them do their thing, right? For example, there's no way, Indira Nagar Ka Gunda would have been something that any of us at the company would have ever come up with, right? Now you leave it to the creators, and then you have to trust them, and you have to be willing to take that risk, right? So the risk is the biggest part here, which is, if you're not willing to take risk with yourself, your brand, your position, then I think you'll end up creating pretty uninspiring, boring shit, which is the bulk of the world. So I think if your aspiration is to do excellence, these are two things that I've seen work kind of very, very differently. And this is from a brand perspective. I think the other part, which is also very, very important, is that you have to invest. Look, I think people have stopped building familiarity with your brand after trying it directly. They're sort of relying on a lot of surround signals around your product itself, and there's a whole bunch of people they trust to make choices about what they use, right? And so there's a whole host of that ecosystem developing, and then I think you have to engage with that ecosystem again in a very earnest way. So for example, I think as Ankur said before, for this current generation bulk of users, YouTube is almost like a search engine for how to do anything. So more likely they're going to go there and they want to see a nice video of how to do it, because that's the most easy way to. And that also has to be a key part of your content strategy, which is, what is my user doing today? Like they're not getting the same level of excitement from the app store pages, right? So they're getting it from somewhere else, and so you have to anticipate that flow of discovery and then consideration and then activation, right? So that's the flow you would think about. That's at least the way I've seen this work better than otherwise. And I don't know, Ankur, what do you think about this? But this is some of the methods that I've seen consistently reapplied, leading to some positive outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The 2 points that I would add in addition to what Miten said was, one, for a brand, is very important to dissociate what is paid content marketing as against what's organic content marketing. The two will have a very different curve of adoption, a very different measurement of success, and thus a very different approach. Very often, brands try and mix the two. So they'll be like, oh, we've created this video, we want to put it up on YouTube, and now we want to promote the video and make sure that it reaches to a lot of people, which is a disaster in the making, because it mixes the two and then you will never be able to recover from it. So there is this long-term investment that a brand will have to make in organic content marketing. And there are several companies that are doing that really well. One company that comes to my mind, which has done it really well, is Smallcase. Smallcase has almost ridden its identity and its brand in the investor segment around content that it is kept producing, whether directly or indirectly through creators, through on its own, without necessarily trying to run a distribution engine on it. And then they've also now invested in content, which is mainstream ads, working with creators and trying to promote that, so on and so forth. And that is a big distinction. The second piece around the organic content element, which combines the power of what creators have to offer. And there are so many high quality creators, not necessarily big ones, but high quality creators, which have very strong affinity in its audience and you as a brand, is something that Tanmay had shared, which I thought was very simple and insightful. Pick creators who are very well aligned with your brand ethos, and then ask them to do the things that they usually do in their daily lives. Don't ask them to do something outside of it. So credit to Cred to get Rahul Dravid, because that was the theme that they wanted to, and that was the clutter-breaking approach that they wanted, which is like, hey, Rahul Dravid, we can't show him just batting like the best defense batsman in the world. No, everybody knows that. Like, let's make him a Gunda, which is a very different approach. But if you were to think of a brand trying to marry its identity with a creator, then just get them to do what they would do on a daily basis and get out of their way. Get out of their way. Don't measure ROI, because the association that you will be able to bring in the audience's mind with the creator's content and your brand is remarkable. It is so subliminal that it's hard to measure, but it is so effective that the next thing you know, you're just driving sales from it and you don't even know how it happened.
Awesome. And so other than Smallcase, Cred, and Unacademy, the three companies you talked about, which companies have done this better? If you can share a few examples, it would be fantastic.
I can speak of the brands that I usually work with, which I think do a good job. Most of them are fintech, because that's my category. But when I think of Zerodha. I think that's Zerodha would be the best creator association brand that this country has without anybody knowing it. They run what is perhaps the most aggressive affiliate program in the country, where you get a certain percentage of the brokerage income for lifetime. And that means that if I sign up through an affiliate link and that person continues to trade through that account, I'm going to earn perpetuity, which is ridiculous as a creator. And I know of creators who none of us in this nice Zoom call would know of, who earn upwards of 30 lakhs a month from affiliate income from Zerodha. And they are not famous. They are creating regional content around stock tipping and trading.
They are
and
effective.
just driving that.
They are
It
effective.
works like magic. It just works. Like people follow them. They have a community of their own, which is all that.
I think that's such an important point, right? Which is we make meaning and trust in different ways, and there's no right way, there's no wrong way, right? It's just different ways. And I think if you start to sort of try to pick the winners, it's just, like it's a silly idea actually. I think Pratik, if I was to add to your question, answer your question, I think Grow does a great job of this. I think they're phenomenal at it. I think Ankur already mentioned Small Case. I think they're good. I also feel like this kind of works in some categories more than others. It's not going to work uniformly for all types of brands. I think that's part of what you have to kind of accept as well, which is this. For example, makeup brands. I mean, Nykaa does a great job as well. There's a whole Nykaa army or something like that. I forget what they're called. And they're like, Sugar is doing it very well now. Like, see, this is it's a place where, if you have to sample the product, and if, as Ankur said, if it's a content creator who's doing what they're anyway doing, and your story and your product is weaved into that, then it has a phenomenally large reach. And I think that's what you have to find. Things where experimentation helps, or some level of demystification is important, where the bar for trying it is very high, or the complexity in like investing in general is a very complex thing, right? It changes every minute. So these are cases where people seek, and that's again where the opportunity of product placement comes in.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you so much. While we have a list of questions that Pratik and I would love to ask, but I see very interesting questions popping up on the chat as well. So let's open it up for the audience, and please do keep adding your questions here. We'll pick and choose from here. Maybe this one looked interesting from KJ. So KJ, I'm giving you permission to talk, so you can ask the question about platform switching.
Yeah, hi Miten. So my question was around the fact that a lot of content that comes on the platform that has to be specific to a particular media that you're channelizing on. So if you're posting on YouTube or like Facebook or these channels. So my question is with regards to the point that as a content creator, does one have to keep in mind that whatever content he produces, that is relatable to a particular type of a medium that he's approaching? So for example, on YouTube, you see that when you can skip an ad. So I see this a lot in Ankur's advertisements that I see on YouTube, that exactly the point when you have that skippable moment in that video, he gives a quick brief about what the session is about. So how does one plan about that thing, or does this have to come up with a particular strategy for every channel that you're approaching? And also, again, just to add on to that these channels will keep evolving. Like we have YouTube today, we might not have it today. I'm not questioning the point, but how does one plan around that what is the platform, and do I create a specific content for that platform, or do I go just agnostic around it?
I think this question is better answered by Ankur.
I agree.
KJ, thank you for your question. Ankur, over to you.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things, KJ, in this question that I could gather. Number one is it is very, very important that the content that you create is platform specific. In fact, to the extent that every platform has very different media assets, And thus they behave very differently as well. And you have to appreciate that, because if you're trying to be quote unquote lazy and just pass on one content piece on YouTube as well, on Instagram as well, on Facebook as well, on Twitter as well, and so on, it's naturally not going to work. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to create different content pieces. What you have to do is mold the current content into different formats. Here's an example. The YouTube ads that I create are all, as you rightly pointed out, and thank you for pointing that out, are designed in such a way that the first 5 seconds, which is the non-skippable part for those ads, are meant to draw in the problem statement as clearly as possible, so that if the audience resonates with that problem statement, they are likelier to continue. If not, then they have all the choice in the world to skip. But on Instagram Reels, where they can skip instantly without any moment of wait, you have to have a different hook. And that hook then very often is not me blabbering into empty space or me trying to convince them with a problem statement. It's more often than not visual in nature. The hook will be, think of a bomb blast. I haven't made an ad with a bomb blast, but you get the message. There has to be something which captivates the visual element in the audience as against the auditory element of the audience. And that is how you would pick the same ad, but make that specific to every platform. And it is imperative that you do that, not just for ads, but for any content piece as well. The content that I would create for an Instagram Reel would be different from a YouTube Shorts, will be different from a YouTube long format, will be different for IGTV, will be different for an IG story, will be different for a Twitter post, so on and so forth. And that is where your hard work shows. And if you do that well, the platforms then do give you that credit.
So Prasid's question is about using WhatsApp for creators using WhatsApp to engage with their audience or to monetize. And do you see creator tools being built for WhatsApp? So let me extend this a bit further. Let's assume all of community tools like WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord. And I think both Miten and Ankur would love to get your views on how is it different from running on more broadcast kind of platforms, and do they serve different purposes? Do you need both to excel probably as a content creator or even a brand? Like, do you need strategies around running these communities?
Let me take a quick stab at it. I'm sure Ankur has a wider view on it. Look, I think any of these mediums, right, have to be one part of your overall strategy. Okay, I don't think it's one thing alone, right? There's multiple things that you have to constantly do. WhatsApp is great, therefore, as a reminder medium. I don't think it's a consumption medium. Okay, it's a way to kind of bring people into your consumption ecosystem. Or if your community in and of itself is a paid community, right? In a lot of cases, you can create a paid community. For example, in Telegram, stock tip communities are massive, and a number of them are paid. All the good ones are paid, right? And so I think the it's a very contextual question, and I think you have to think about it based on the ultimate content that you're selling. But to a large extent, it won't be the only thing you do.
And Miten, if I'm reading between the lines, the community is not an effective tool for then distribution, in your opinion, like for growing your audience base. This is more for engagement. People who are already paying or people who are already signed up, you're sending reminders.
Look, I think the community is both, right? So one is obviously engaging the existing people, but then why do people want to join a community? Two fundamental reasons. One is they're going to gain some money or some fame or something like that, right? And the second thing is that their existing their cohort of people are hanging around there. As I say, the PLU problem, right? People like us. So people, like, for example, right? Let's take a simple example. Pratik, Rahul, and me are part of a community on WhatsApp called 256. Okay? It's a WhatsApp group of VCs. We all want to be there. Tomorrow, if the guy said this is paid, we would pay any amount of money to be in there. And so, it's problem statement specific. And I think, but being in there is important. What's happening in there is also important. So the community makes itself, but at the same time, the PLU factor brings people into that form factor. And I think, again, as a creator, your question is, YouTube is not a distribution. Sorry, WhatsApp is not a distribution. It's a reminder medium. If you're creating content, you're not going to like deliver the content over there, because that's not a platform that affords consumption. That's a platform that affords reaction.
Yeah, in fact, a common friend of all of us who tried to build on WhatsApp actually had this interesting insight that some content is push content and some content is pull content. So if I get content like this startup news or Bollywood
news and sports, where the temporal nature of it is short. If the half-life is a few hours, right? That's the way to think about it. If it's old news in 6 hours, India match jeeta ke hara, kal dekh ke kya karoge? Most people's interest will peak within 6 hours. Same thing for what happened to a stock, or same thing for what happened to a global event or whatever, right? So it's about the half, and startup news, for example, is one example of that, which is half-life.
Yeah. So content where the context is temporal, there WhatsApp might work, but in other cases WhatsApp will not work. And it was a very interesting insight he shared there.
I'll probably add one more to that. Again, coming from a founder, something interesting he told us is that some content creators, while they are like broadcasting content, they don't want distraction. So let's say if you're putting things on YouTube or Instagram, there's always the scrolling option or click something. But if you're putting something out in Discord or WhatsApp, for certain category of creators, the quality of engagement is a bit better, and they find that to be a better distribution channel as well. And typically these groups are broadcast groups. They do it, or you have probably simple reactions to that. But if like you have 4,000 people, everyone starts commenting on that, then it becomes a nightmare. But if you allow just reactions or something like that, like these broadcast groups work really well for distribution of content, because there is no distraction, and some creators actually end up preferring that. Of course, the downside is that then you're not getting discovered by more people. So probably works better for people who already have some audience base and want to keep them engaged.
Awesome. One question that Shubham has asked, I know no straightforward answer to this question, but let's take a stab at it. That in categories where content does not exist, you come in and create high quality content, it works out. But in categories which is super competitive, other than quality, what else can content creators or brands do to differentiate themselves? By the way, interestingly, all of you talked about a lot of financial services companies creating high quality content, but I would argue that the new financial services company now will perhaps not be able to differentiate as much because all the top keywords or the top distribution hacks have been taken away. So how would you advise people to think about it when they're creating content?
If I can, I wouldn't agree with the fact that the space is already crowded and there's not enough space. And I'm a living example of that. Not a finance expert, has nothing to do with money, never created content, suddenly comes up on stage and starts creating content, and then in 2 years it works in a way that nobody, including me, could have imagined. And this is when they were really, and there still are, really high quality finance content creators that are doing a commendable job. There are two things that I believe work, which most brands, especially brands, do not do. One, do not speak of the brand. Your brand is not why people will watch this content. So the minute you're talking about, hey, this is what we do, nobody wants to listen. You have to help them. That is the cornerstone of every content creation journey. You have to create content that is universal, generic, high quality to the user, and that is it, which goes back to the same thing that Miten was referring, right? When you have somebody came in and says, Ghana, that is not thinking from the brand perspective. While the name is Ghana, it is thinking from the user's perspective, where Ghana is a completely different identity in their head. Number two, is rely on what will be subliminal integration of your brand as against an explicit expression of that brand. So for example, if you're a fintech company and let's say you're doing BNPL is the flavor of the month. So you're doing buy now, pay laters. You have to create content around credit. You have to create content around loans. You have to create content around how to pay back those loans fast. You have to create content around when is the right time to take a loan. What should be the ways that you think about taking a loan? Why are credit cards good? Why are credit cards horrible? How do people who get into the credit card cycle emerge out of it? Success stories, failure stories, disasters, all of that, which in your head, you may think, oh my God, this is disastrous for the brand because how can I speak about the category in an ill manner when I represent that category? That authenticity is the only way that you will create trust. And when you're doing that, just have this. That's it. Before the book was launched, I had this poster for 9 months. Every single video, 3 videos a week, watched by millions of people, were just looking at this do epic shit. That's it. So I don't own this slogan. I didn't come up with this. Somebody else does. But now I have a copyright on it only because when I say do epic shit, even when it's global, like, and sorry, I'm tom-tomming about this, but it's an important point to make. There was a viral thread that was posted by a trans person in the US on a men's and a women's loo. And the tweet said, I'm terrified, which is a reality for trans people because they don't know where they have to go. But the men's loo said, do epic shit. And the women's loo said something else, which I don't remember. And people were tagging me on that tweet. Hey, Warikoo doing global marketing and all that. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. But that is the power of how you subliminally insert into the consumer's mind the inception of that idea. That's the way that you will work as a brand. And it has worked consistently well with all brands that I've worked with. And I've done it myself. So I have full confidence of it working that way.
Interesting. So we'll probably move to the last topic for today, which is around live video. And live audio is also there, but particularly talking about live video in this case, typically, like there are several studies that will show typically like live videos lead to higher engagement than static content. Well, flip side, of course, is that as a creator, you have to spend more time, right? It's not as scalable. So, Ankur, maybe if you can go first, like how do you mix and match live and static in your strategy? What are the purposes they are serving? And there, like which platforms you think are very well suited today for live engagement?
So live has very different purposes on very different platforms. So on YouTube, live is largely around streaming, and that's frankly the best use of it. So if you're a gamer, and Tanmay has done such a great job, Samay Rana has done such a great job. Like there's so many creators that do a fantastic job of streaming, and that works very well. But if you are a creator around long form content and you do a live, it gives a great spike, but then it doesn't travel in time. And YouTube's core identity of creating content is that you create content that travels in time. You have a video that you produced 2 years back, it's still getting you views and impressions and followers because that's perennial content. Instagram, on the other hand, live is a very powerful way of engagement because it suddenly gives a lot more weight and it makes the content creator come a lot more face-to-face because it allows people to join with you on that live session, while YouTube simply allows you to chat. So my suggestion to creators will be, if you're not streaming, then use live very sporadically on YouTube. I use it only once a month, and that is also a rarity. Once every 2 months is the ideal case. So once every 24 videos is where my live proportion will go. But I do a live every week on Instagram, and that has worked really well for me. And that I'm in my 80th week now of doing that Instagram live every week, and that shows magnification powers on engagement. We're not yet there at the China level where people are consuming live as a form of attaching their life to somebody else's life. कि मैं खाना खा रहा हूँ, लाइव स्ट्रीम हो रहा है, मैं नहा रहा हूँ, मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ, मैं कपड़े धो रहा हूँ, लाइव स्ट्रीम हो रहा है. We're not yet there. We're not yet that level of, I don't know whether it's loneliness or whether it's dissociation or whether it's virtual addiction, whatever the names may be. And I don't know whether we'll ever get there. So far, live for India is instant consumption, engagement, and then leave with no spillover. And it works really well for streaming, and it works really well for Instagram.
Interesting. And I have a short question on that, but I'll come back. Miten, for this, on this aspect, if you could keep your investor hat on this one. We are seeing a lot of startups, and I'm sure there are founders in this group who are probably thinking about live as a feature, or some founders are thinking about live as the primary product that they're building and trying to take on the consumer tech space in India. Do you see opportunity for that? Like, do you think that live as the primary model for a new large consumer app to be created from India?
I think it's hard to imagine this happening very, very easily. I think many attempts have been made. I think the killer app for that doesn't seem to have emerged yet. The killer use case, like why would I just be on, or why would I go in and out multiple times? But I think there are different opportunities. I made a recent investment in a company from that a former colleague started, where what they're trying to do, they're trying to embed the ability to have live conversations over video with merchants. Now, imagine if you went to a Shopify website, Shopify merchant, and if there was a way to sort of think about it like a virtual showroom. I'm not going to travel to some specific place sometimes, or for example, an up and coming direct to consumer brand is not going to have store presence everywhere. Imagine if you showed up on their website, if they were free, you could just press a button and have a real conversation with them, ask them questions. They could show you the product. They could just engage with you like you were in a store. I think that's a large and interesting emerging platform capability, which I think gets kind of embedded everywhere. So I think that is one kind of potential, what should I say, hero use case or killer app for live. I do think that there will be some opportunity around live shopping or some form of entertainment leading to shopping. And internally at Cred, we call it shoptainment, right? Where shopping is also feels like entertainment. And please don't read that we're doing something about it. This is just something we discuss. But the point is that can live be entertaining, and then also there be some shopping element in it for some use cases that are some pre-programmed time every month or every week, right? Hey, Friday mornings, we talk gadgets with Ankur Warikoo, and hey, if you like it, there's a click button here, buy now, right? Like that kind of stuff is where I think it'll emerge, but no major super app has emerged yet, in my view.
Interesting. Got it. And
I'll tell you one very fundamental reason why this doesn't work. It's also one of the main reasons why something like a Clubhouse peaked pretty fast and then fizzled off. Dude, the internet is inherently an asynchronous medium. And you're trying to push a synchronous use case on an asynchronous medium. It just makes no sense. You're going against the tide in a huge way, where the whole idea of the internet is that I'll consume on my time, my feed will be personalized. And, it's just a very different, we all have our own unique portal into the internet, right? It's not a TV broadcast ke sab ek saath NDTV dekh rahe hain raat ko 9 baje, right? And that time is gone. And so you have to really ask yourself, like, does this need to be done synchronously? And in very, 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 very few cases, it makes sense.
A lot of people request like this build for creators to be, we just send them the YouTube link later. But yeah, I think people who ended up joining, especially people who are asking questions, for them it might be useful. But I get your point, Miten. Like for certain focus group discussions like this, it could be useful to do live. Otherwise, if there's no engagement, for example, on this session, then this you just watch it async.
Exactly.
So I'll just
to some extent, like look, I think what we're doing here, right, was done in traditional talk shows where There was there is a need for it, but is it daily? Is it monthly? Is it weekly? How many of these sessions are any of us going to? Right? So then you have to ask yourself, agar main yahi kar raha hu, to bhai dhanda nahi banega.
And I also think that a lot
like, for example, sorry to cut you off, Pratik. Pratik, this is content marketing for Stellaris and Nexus.
Yeah.
This is a tactic for you as part of a broader set of things that you're doing for your community, which is entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Right? And in those cases, it makes sense.
And of that hera fairy meme, zor se bol ke sabko scheme bata de.
No, and by the way, I so agree with this. And like if you just take that mindset that this is content marketing for us, then everything that we are doing and everything that you said that you said we are trying to do it. So this is one format, this is live, but we'll make sure it is tweeted in a different format. And every platform has its own distribution power.
You'll email it, you'll tweet it, you'll YouTube it, you'll time splice it. Today is live, you'll wait a week later, you'll.
Yes.
I mean, we are all content creators here, right here, right? That's literally what's happening.
And what we are doing is we are posting the same content in on different distribution platforms. The other thing, the advantage of live is that everyone gets to have the motivation that this is the right time to do it. Otherwise, it's always procrastinated, and the 100 people who attended might not have attended, and everyone would have bookmarked the link, but not converted. So I agree with you. And the one small point I would also add there. I actually got that inspiration from Wordle. That Wordle is actually against internet if you think about it. That you could have 1,000 games, but Wordle once a day just make sure that all of us are talking about it, and it's a very smart entry point. That what can be done that everyone talks about the same thing and we just don't have infinite options. But very exciting. Thank you for sharing, Ankur, Miten, and like I said earlier in the beginning of the conversation, that this was really, we would have anyways had these conversations with you one-on-one. So it was fantastic to learn from you, fantastic to get your perspective in public as well. And both of you have had different journeys. Ankur, both of you started as entrepreneurs, but Ankur, you have become a content creator first entrepreneur, while Miten became an investor and now an operator. So very different journeys and very interesting insights from both of you. So sincerely appreciated. I'm sure everyone here had a lot of fun, and thank you very much from all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All the best. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.